The air hung heavy with the silence of forgotten memories. Dust lay thick on the surfaces, a blanket of neglect over once cherished furniture. The windows were grimy, obscuring the outside world like cataracts in the eyes of an old man. In the flickering gaslight of the street lamps outside, one could almost make out the faded grandeur of the place. The plush booths, the ornate counter, the gleaming espresso machine, now cold and lifeless. The cafe was a tomb of memories, a forgotten monument to a brighter past. Jason, a young man with a thirst for adventure, stepped cautiously through the doorway. His flashlight cut through the darkness, a beacon in the sea of shadows that clung to the cafe's interior.
I see beauty in the decay, a certain melancholic charm in the forgotten and abandoned.
Jason, a photographer by trade, ran a hand along the dusty surface of a nearby table, his fingers tracing the outline of a heart carved into the wood. He imagined the young lovers who had sat here, their laughter echoing through the cafe. As he reached the counter, he noticed a small, faded photograph tucked behind the register's dusty glass. The woman in the photo was beautiful, with high cheekbones and a cascade of dark, curly hair.
Who are you?
He couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching him, her gaze following his every move. As Jason stared at the photograph, he felt a cold draft snake around his ankles, raising goosebumps on his skin. The bell rang again, this time closer, and Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. The bell's chime echoed through the emptiness, a haunting melody that seemed to seep into his bones.
Where are you coming from?
He shone his flashlight into the dark corners, its beam cutting through the gloom like a surgeon's scalpel. Fear, cold and clammy, tightened its grip on Jason's chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. He felt a cold spot on his arm, as if an icy finger had traced a path across his skin. Jason's gaze swept the room, searching for the source of the sudden chill. That's when he saw it. On a small table in the center of the room, a single cup of coffee steamed invitingly.
What is this?
He cautiously approached the table, his flashlight beam illuminating the cup. The coffee inside was a deep, rich brown, steam curling from its surface in wispy tendrils that disappeared into the darkness above. Jason whirled around, his heart pounding in his chest.
Who's there?
And then he saw her. A figure, shrouded in shadows, stood in the corner of the room, her form barely discernible against the darkness.
Oh my God.
Fear, sharp and cold, shot through Jason.
Don't be afraid.
The woman's voice was a soft, melodic murmur that seemed to drift from the shadows themselves.
Who are you?
The woman took another step forward, her form emerging from the darkness like a phantom taking shape. Her dress, once a vibrant blue, was now faded and dusty.
I am the waitress. I have been waiting for you.
Waiting for me? But why?
The last customer? Every night I wait for the last customer. It is my duty, my curse.
What happens when the last customer comes?
Jason's mind reeled. A waitress? In a cafe that had been abandoned for years? It made no sense. The woman's gaze drifted to the cup of coffee on the table, its steam now fading into the cool air. He already feared the answer, his gut twisting with a premonition of something terrible.
They become like me, trapped here forever.
Jason's breath hitched in his throat. He understood. He was meant to be the next victim of this place, the last customer in a string of souls claimed by the abandoned cafe. He looked from the woman's anguished face to the steaming cup of coffee on the table, his mind racing. He had to escape. He had to get out of this cafe and never look back. An idea sparked in Jason's mind, a desperate gamble that might just be his only chance of escape. The woman's eyes widened, her gaze fixed on Jason's hand as it closed around the warm ceramic of the cup. Could this be it? Could this young man be the one to break the cycle, to free her from her ghostly prison? Jason lifted the cup, the aroma of the coffee filling his senses, a potent blend of bitter and sweet.
What is your name?
He needed to buy time, to figure out a way to use this unexpected turn of events to his advantage.
They called me Sarah.
Jason raised the cup to his lips, his gaze never leaving Sarah's. He took a slow, deliberate sip, the hot liquid scalding his tongue, the bitter taste flooding his mouth. He fought the urge to cough, to spit out the coffee and break the strange spell that had settled over the cafe.
He watched as Sarah's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. Hope and fear warred on her face, a reflection of the conflicting emotions churning within Jason himself. He knew that he was playing a dangerous game, but he had to see it through.
This coffee, it reminds me of someone.
He paused, gathering his thoughts, weaving a tale of loss and regret, mirroring the sorrow he sensed in Sarah's spectral heart.
My grandmother. She used to make coffee just like this, every Sunday afternoon after church.
He closed his eyes, conjuring up the image of his grandmother's warm kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and freshly baked bread mingling with the aroma of coffee. He told Sarah about the old chipped mugs, the ones his grandmother refused to throw away, the ones that held a lifetime of memories in their worn ceramic. Sarah stood transfixed, her spectral form shimmering in the dim light of the abandoned cafe. Jason's words painted vivid pictures in the air, stirring long dormant emotions within her. For a moment, the weight of her eternal servitude seemed to lessen, replaced by a flicker of warmth, a yearning for a past life, a life filled with the simple joys of human connection.
Sunday dinners, laughter and arguments, the bittersweet pain of watching my grandmother age, her once vibrant spirit slowly fading. She passed away, and an emptiness settled over my life in her absence. The coffee became a ritual, a way to honor her memory, to keep her spirit alive in my heart.
And as he spoke, he realized that he wasn't just telling Sarah a story. He was sharing a piece of himself, a piece of his own grief and longing. A single tear rolled down Sarah's cheek, a shimmering droplet that hung suspended in the air, a testament to her lingering humanity. Jason watched as the tear fell, landing on the dusty floor with a soft, almost imperceptible thud. It was a sound that spoke volumes, a sound that shattered the silence of the abandoned cafe and broke the spell that had held them both captive.
Jason gently placed the coffee cup back on the table, his gaze never leaving Sarah's. He could sense a shift in the atmosphere, a lightening of the heavy energy that had permeated the cafe.
Thank you for remembering. The air, once thick with despair, now held a glimmer of something else. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just a shared sense of sorrow. The silence that followed was no longer oppressive, but filled with an unspoken understanding, a bridge of empathy built across the chasm between the living and the spectral. Sarah reached out a trembling hand, her spectral fingers hovering just above Jason's. He could feel a faint warmth, a tingling sensation where her touch should have been. Her eyes, once filled with a haunting sadness, now held a flicker of gratitude, a glimmer of peace.
The words seemed to echo through the cafe, a release of pent-up emotions that had been trapped for far too long. The air shimmered around Sarah, her form becoming less distinct, the edges blurring as if she were fading away. Jason watched in awe as a warm, ethereal light began to emanate from Sarah, bathing his hand in a golden glow. It was a light that seemed to banish the shadows, to chase away the chill that had seeped into his bones. It was a light that spoke of forgiveness, of redemption, of the enduring power of human connection. The light intensified, enveloping Sarah completely. She closed her eyes, her face bathed in a serene light, the lines of sorrow softening, the weight of eternity lifting from her shoulders.
I felt a lump forming in my throat, a mixture of sadness and relief washing over me. I knew with a certainty that defied logic that Sarah was finally free.
He watched as the light began to swirl and dance, forming a vortex of energy that filled the abandoned cafe. The air crackled with electric anticipation, the temperature fluctuating wildly as the boundaries between the physical and the spectral blurred. Jason felt himself being drawn towards the light, a magnetic pull that he couldn't resist.
I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the unknown. Was this it? Was this the price of Sarah's freedom, my own soul forfeit to the spectral realm? I had faced my own mortality with a sense of calm, accepting my fate. But as the light engulfed me, I felt not fear, but a strange sense of peace.
The light faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Jason standing alone in the center of the abandoned cafe. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the dimness. The air was still, the silence almost deafening after the whirlwind of energy that had just swept through the room.
I looked around, searching for any sign of Sarah, for any trace of the light that had consumed her. The cafe was empty. The chairs sat overturned, the tables dusty and bare. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and decay. The familiar aroma of coffee vanished. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what had just transpired. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination brought on by the late hour and the eerie atmosphere of the abandoned cafe?
He ran a hand through his hair, his fingers brushing against something small and hard. He brought his hand down, opening his palm to reveal a single, faded blue button, identical to the ones he had seen on Sarah's dress. It was a tangible reminder of the spectral encounter, proof that he hadn't imagined it all. The first rays of dawn pierced through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting long, sharp shadows across the dusty floor of the cafe. Jason stirred, his body stiff and sore from a night spent huddled in the cold, empty space.
I slowly sat up, my head pounding, my memories of the night before returning in a rush of fragmented images. The shadowy figure, the steaming cup of coffee, the blinding light. I looked around the cafe, my eyes scanning the familiar surroundings, the overturned chairs, the dusty tables, the abandoned counter. It looked different in the harsh light of day, less menacing, more melancholy. The air, once thick with spectral energy, now felt stale and lifeless, the silence heavy with the weight of forgotten dreams.
He slowly uncurled his fingers, revealing the blue button nestled in his palm. It was cold to the touch, the fabric worn thin with time, but it was real. He traced the outline of the button with his thumb, the smooth, cool surface grounding him in the reality of the moment.
I wasn't sure what had happened that night, but I knew with a certainty that defied logic, that I had been touched by something extraordinary, something both terrifying and beautiful. I stood up, my legs shaky beneath me, and made my way towards the boarded-up entrance. I had to get out of this place, to breathe in the fresh air, to feel the warmth of the sun on my face. I needed to ground myself in the reality of the living, to shake off the lingering chill of the spectral encounter.
Jason stepped out of the cafe and into the bright morning light, the sounds and smells of the city washing over him like a wave. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the fresh, clean air, the taste of freedom bittersweet on his tongue.
I looked back at the abandoned cafe, its boarded-up windows staring back at me like vacant eyes. I thought of Sarah, of her eternal servitude, of her longing for release. I hoped with all my heart that she had found peace, that my act of kindness, however small, had been enough to break the chains that bound her.
He slipped the blue button into his pocket, a tangible reminder of the spectral encounter, a promise to never forget the woman who had haunted the abandoned cafe. As he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving a part of himself behind, a piece of his soul forever intertwined with the fate of the last customer.
I knew that I would never forget my night in the abandoned cafe, that the experience would stay with me, a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates the world of the living from the realm of the dead. And though I knew that some might dismiss my story as a hallucination, a figment of my imagination, I held fast to the truth I held in my heart. I had looked into the eyes of a ghost, had shared a moment of profound connection with a soul lost in the shadows. And in that moment I had glimpsed a truth that transcended the boundaries of life and death, a truth about the enduring power of compassion, the lingering echoes of love and the haunting beauty of stories left untold.